And I want to thank Melissa for her immense patience. If we could put her up on the screen. There you are. Melissa, thank you for taking the time joining us, and we are happy to be joined by Melissa Lee Hein, who, as I mentioned, the World Food Programme's Head of Communication in Yangon. So we will leave you to make some opening remarks and then take some questions.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Yeah, I just wanted to share a few updates from Myanmar just about the impact of the earthquake that hit on Friday. What we know is that as of today, almost 3,000 are dead and thousands more injured and missing. And the devastation is really alarming. Colleagues are reporting buildings turned to rubble, homes destroyed, and significant damage to roads and bridges and other infrastructure. Electricity supplies are still down in many places, and phone communication is patchy at best. And added to this, the destruction of hospitals and a lack of clean water. And all of this, before the earthquake, the humanitarian needs in Myanmar were already huge. We know that 20 million people were in need of humanitarian support, 15 million facing food insecurity, and more than 3.5 million people displaced by the conflict over the past 4 years. So the earthquake on Friday has made a bad situation really so much worse. And while people are resilient after years of conflict and successive disasters, many have little or nothing to fall back on. In 2023, there was Cyclone Mocha, last year major floods, and now this earthquake, and that's all against the backdrop of ongoing conflict and displacement. So after the earthquake, a state of emergency was declared across 6 states and regions. Among the worst affected are Mandalay, Naypyidaw, Shan, and Sagaing. And what we're seeing is that the effect of the earthquake is largely concentrated in the northwest dry zone. And this is an area that was already suffering with chronic poverty, ongoing conflict, and frequent displacement. And in fact, a majority of displacement over the past 4 years has been in Sagaing, where more than 1.2 million people were already displaced prior to the earthquake. So in response to this pretty grim picture, the UN and international community is responding. Just 48 hours after the earthquake hit, the World Food Programme was delivering emergency food supplies to people in Naypyidaw. That was on Sunday. On Monday, teams started to provide food and cash assistance in Shan and Sagaing. And today, distributions of emergency food from WFP started in Mandalay. And the teams are saying that the scenes in Mandalay are deeply concerning. People are sleeping outside. If they're lucky, they have maybe a sheet or a tarp for cover, and some have nothing. In one of the worst parts of the city, WFP team said that almost every house had been destroyed, either by the earthquake or a major fire that followed in that area. So people are anxious and afraid. Even if buildings are standing, many don't want to return home for fear of collapse. Aftershocks are still a regular occurrence. One woman, she's 77, she told WFP that before the earthquake, she'd been earning a living selling boiled water in the market, and the sale she earned gave her about 70 cents a day. And after the earthquake, her shelter is gone, her livelihood is gone, and she has just no capacity to rebuild. And she said the shaking had gone, but the fear remained. And it's this kind of story and desperate situation that just is being seen across Mandalay, across all the areas in which WFP is responding. The initial focus for WFP and other UN agencies working together is to address obviously the most pressing needs. That's food, shelter, clean water as a first step. To date, WFP has reached more than 15,000 people with emergency food. We've been distributing ready-to-eat rations that can sustain people through the coming week. And from there, we'll start to scale up the response even further. We plan to assist 850,000 people with basic food and cash rations in April. but the needs really are huge, and support is needed. That support includes an end to the conflict, free and unimpeded humanitarian access, and also the resources to meet the needs. And all three of those things are critical. For WFP, we have food in our warehouses across the country. We've been delivering humanitarian assistance across the past 4 years. So we have food there, but we still need the funds to cover the cost of moving that food to earthquake hit areas and distributing it. And there's also a big need for resources for cash assistance so that people can cover those basic needs, whether that's food, shelter, water, medical supplies. And this kind of assistance can also be a catalyst for reviving markets, which is important. So overall, WFP estimates at least $20 million will be needed just for our part of the earthquake response, and likely across the whole response, it'll be obviously much higher. And still, that's really only part of the picture. Just a few weeks ago, as you may be aware, WFP was forced to drastically scale down its regular humanitarian assistance in Myanmar. And we announced that we had to cut planned support for more than 1 million people. Those cuts were in response to existing funding gaps. And those gaps remain, and yet now the humanitarian needs are even bigger again. So the earthquake, it's really come at the worst possible time for people in Myanmar, and really it's critical for the international community to bring the resources and support necessary to this situation, so that people here can get through this latest crisis. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy if anyone has any questions about the response and about the situation.
Thank you very much, Melissa. We are now going to open the floor for questions. Edie, please go ahead.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. Melissa, my name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Can you tell us whether any UN aid agency or any NGOs have actually gotten into the opposition-held areas to assess damage in especially Shan and Sagan?
So what we know is the initial focus is on the urban area of Mandalay, which is where the brunt of the kind of epicenter of the impact is. But our teams are doing needs assessments all over. We've had WFP teams in different parts of the country, Shan, Sagaing, working over the past 4 years, and they're working at the local level to access areas and people that need support wherever they are. So that work is continuing. As humanitarians, we coordinate our efforts with anyone on the ground that we need to, that is required so that our humanitarian support can get through. So that continues. I mean, it is a very challenging situation on the ground, as I'm sure you're aware. It's very complex, different groups in control of different areas. So for WFP and other humanitarian partners, we take the same approach as we have been, just doing what we can and to get access to people that need our help.
They seen in those areas not controlled by the government. What have they seen in those areas not controlled by the government?
I think across all areas, regardless of control, the needs are the same. The earthquake, I guess, did not discriminate in terms of who has control. So the damage is very much the same. Obviously, the response currently is quite focused on Mandalay, which is an urban area, but for sure there's needs in the more rural areas, and it is a challenge to just build up a clear picture of those needs given the lack of communications access at the moment, as well as electricity and road access. So it is taking time to really get a clear picture of the needs across all areas, but that work is continuing, and for now we expect that in the coming weeks we'll have a more full picture, and while those assessments are happening we continue to deliver assistance across all the areas.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Melissa. It's Pamela Falk. Can you hear? U.S. News and World Report. Thank you. First, the two minor questions. One is all the aid from you and other agencies and governments getting in? Is the military stopping any aid or diverting any aid? And the second is the heavy machinery that's needed to find people that are trapped. Is that getting in, and are the countries that would usually sending it? Thank you.
So I can't speak fully to that. For World Food Programme, our resources, food, we have that in the country. We procure rice and pulses locally. We have those food supplies in our warehouses, and that's what we're distributing. So that's our focus. We are seeing reports of international rescue crews coming in, and also the lack of machinery. I can't speak to what attempts there have been to kind of increase access to that heavy machinery for rescue efforts. For us, the focus is on the response and the immediate needs. So different humanitarian partners, I guess, are working across the different aspects of the response. So I can speak to the food part of the response and those meeting those urgent needs, but beyond that we have the food resources in the country. Now it's just a challenge of having the funds to move them where we need to.
Follow up, just is any food aid being blocked going anywhere?
So far, no reports of that from our teams. The response is in its very early days. 48 hours after we were there responding with food assistance in Naypyidaw and then Sagaing, Shan, now Mandalay. So to date, there's been no challenges for us, but as I mentioned, we've reached 15,000 people so far. The plan is to reach 850,000, and the operating environment is complex. That has been the case for the past 4 years. We've been delivering assistance for the past 4 years, responding to people displaced by conflict. So I expect those challenges will continue, and our teams will continue to work at the local level to navigate that complexity.
Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press. Two questions. First, to what extent, if any, has WFP, in terms of delivery, experienced any looting of its supplies? And secondly, you mentioned funding gaps even prior to the earthquake. I want to know, to what extent could you say that might have been exacerbated by the drastic cuts in U.S. aid funding and programs by the Trump administration, or whether the funding gap is reflective of a larger, more global problem in terms of not supplying enough money for the pay for the needs that you are trying to meet.
Maybe I'll answer your second question first. But yeah, I think we're seeing a global trend in humanitarian resources, perhaps shifting to other things, and the overall numbers of funds, the amount of funds is decreasing. And at the same time, humanitarian needs are increasing. Myanmar, and as you've heard in the briefing, in many other parts of the world. The needs are huge. So kind of year by year, the needs are increasing, and it seems like humanitarian support is decreasing. So we're having to do more with less, and also looking for other ways to support our humanitarian responses through individual support, through corporate funds. So it's a global situation, and one that we're concerned about given the increasing needs. And in terms of looting, we did have experience last year. There's some changing conflict dynamics on the ground. So WFP, we lost access to some of our warehouses. So we have not, as WFP, have not been able to get back to those locations to independently verify, but there's been reports of looting and damage to those warehouses. So certainly that's a function and of operating in this conflict context. We don't always have control of what's going on around us. So our humanitarian staff, they're really at the front lines, and access can change at any given time depending on the conflict and the security situation on the ground.
Excuse me. Evelyn Leopold, Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. Are the UN staff regarded with any suspicion that they might be helping the opposition to the government? Do you have to watch it? And secondly, to follow up on Joe's, is there any American aid coming in? Because USA did have a program there until, what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, for our colleagues, it's a challenging situation for them. I mean, what I've seen in my past 3 years here is that they're really kind of living through the crisis and trying to respond to it. The things that we're seeing play out, conflict, displacement, impact of the earthquake, that affects our WFP staff and humanitarians in the same way. We had colleagues lose houses following the earthquake, and then they were back at work delivering support. The same is true after, you know, families displaced or homes damaged as a result of conflict. So there's always that tension there and challenge for people working in these difficult circumstances, for sure. But again, the approach and the way forward is to remain neutral and independent. So we don't get involved in political conflicts. We make sure that our assistance goes directly to the people in need, either directly from WFP or through our partners, our community-based organizations or NGO partners that we work with. So in that way, we maintain those humanitarian principles despite the challenges. And on the, sorry, your second question.
It's on the...
Follow up on the question of whether any U.S. aid might have been cut off that you were counting on that might have adversely affected your programs.
The U.S. has been a long partner of WFP in Myanmar, and we hope that support will continue. Obviously, there's been a pause to funds, but as I said before, that's only part of the challenge. It's not just there, but globally, humanitarian support has declined. So together, that means, you know, overall the picture is more challenging in terms of funding, and the needs are increasing. I mean, if we look at just this earthquake, as I mentioned, before that, already 20 million people needed humanitarian assistance. WFP was assisting, but even our plans with the funds that we did have, that we did anticipate, we expected to be able to reach 1 million people each year. So that's far short of the needs. So really, it is a global challenge that really needs addressing, given the increasing needs in Myanmar and elsewhere.
Hear me? Ah, there's something. All right. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that famous poetic road to Mandalay is now open. Is that true?
Yeah, today and yesterday, our teams we've been deploying staff to Mandalay. We previously, in the past 4 years, were delivering humanitarian assistance in areas like Sagaing and Shan. But in Mandalay, an urban area, we had not been delivering regular humanitarian assistance. So we've quickly deployed a team there, and more staff have joined them to support our response efforts. So the roads are damaged. Colleagues from our supply chain team are doing road assessments and transport assessments. So certainly we're seeing that repairs have started on some of the roads. Some of the electricity supplies are starting to come back. But certainly travel times are longer, and it's definitely challenging to move food around the country to these locations given the damage that has occurred.
Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, it's Eric Peters with Kyoto News, Japanese media. So I know it's not your area, but the spokesperson mentioned earlier the amount of urban search and rescue teams in the country, and it seemed like it was a little low. Do you know if any more are coming, and if you had a number? And second, if you could provide some more examples, like anecdotes or specific examples of some obstacles you're facing for aid access.
Sure. I can't speak to the search and rescue aspect. I know just from the reports here that we're seeing different teams, especially from the ASEAN region, coming in to support, but I'm not sure of any other plans on that front. I mean, the challenges remain, as I said, conflict and access. Those have been challenges for the past 4 years, and those are likely to remain challenges unless there's an end to the conflict and unless unimpeded humanitarian access is available to us. So those remain, as well as the funding situation. So those three things together, if there's solutions on any and all of those fronts, then obviously it dramatically reduces the need for humanitarian assistance, for one, but it also makes it easier that humanitarian actors can respond in the ways that are necessary.
Very much. Do we have any further questions? If not, I would like to say thank to our guest today, Ms. Melissa Lee Hein. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.